Quem tem uma empresa sabe quanto tempo é valioso. Por isso, a Apex Brasil apoia empresas brasileiras que querem exportar seus produtos, atrair investimentos estrangeiros ou empreender no exterior. Com a Apex Brasil, as empresas brasileiras têm um apoio estratégico para mandar seus produtos e serviços para fora do país de uma forma inteligente e segura. Com métodos inovadores, parcerias, soluções inteligentes, visão de mercado, conteúdos estratégicos e muita qualificação, a Apex Brasil é referência na promoção de exportações, internacionalização de empresas e atração de investimentos estrangeiros. A agência também atua de forma coordenada com atores públicos e privados em setores estratégicos, tanto para o desenvolvimento da competitividade das empresas quanto para o fortalecimento da economia brasileira. Se é conexão com o mundo de oportunidades no mercado internacional que a sua empresa procura, é o apoio da Apex Brasil que ela precisa. Acesse o mundo. Acesse Apex Brasil.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening for you. My name is Renato Godinho. I co-chair this conference. Welcome again to the BBEST-Biofuture Summit 2 joint conference. I'm happy to introduce here one of our final events, final live events of the conference, which is the wrap-up, the Biofuture Summit wrap-up, a roadmap for the bioeconomy acceleration. So we reached the third day of the conference. There are lots of content, and we have been very happy to see the amount of interaction and dynamic questions, answers, and the engagement of our audience. There are 40 sessions in total for you to enjoy here. It is a lot to absorb. So luckily, this system allows us to continue attending the conferences that we weren't able to in these days. And we are here to provide a taste and a debate on much of what has transpired during the conference in these days. So this is today, you enjoy us, the moderators of the different sessions, key sessions along of the conference, and who are also all Biofuture Platform core group members. They will bring to you some of the best debates and conclusions from sessions on key aspects such as technology policies, market-going policies for bioenergy, transportation, biorefining, and others. So stay tuned for the debate here. I think we'll have a very lively debate combining the different pieces that we need to push the bioeconomy sector forward. The core group who we will see engaging here in this panel with you and the audience, it is the very central governing body of the Biofuture platform that conducts the day-to-day activities, try to refine, best define and implement the mandates that the member countries have given to us with the support always of the IEA facilitator. So we are some of the people that are very much engaged in this collaboration daily. And we are here to present much of what has been achieved in this conference and in terms of ideas and proposals and findings for the Biofuture platform and for the bioeconomy going forward. Well, today is also a special occasion for me personally, as this is my final public event as chair of the Biofuture platform. So you have probably already attended to the opening session where you learned that Brazil at this occasion on June 1st will pass on the mandate of chair to the United States. And Brazil has been very proud to help support this collective effort that we have managed to undertake in these days. So as both authorities that spoken in the opening session from Brazil and the US, as they highlighted, in these years since the launch in 2016, the platform has moved to become the premier multilateral forum discussing policies and collaboration to promote the broad, sustainable acceleration of bioenergy and the bio-based economy. So, and I believe that this transfer that happens today reinforces the multilateral nature of the Biofuture platform, reinforces international collaboration, creates and distributed ownership of the whole initiative. So the United States is the world leader in biofuels production and also very strong in many key areas of the bioeconomy and is very primed to lead. We're very happy that the US is taking this role going forward. I wish now to thank many people and institutions that have helped us in these years. So I wish to thank very strongly the International Energy Agency, represented today by Paulo Frankel, also as the facilitator, has been working with the Biofuture platform members tirelessly to promote the many aspects of our work. So I also wish to thank my incredible team back in Brazil and the support of my ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Government, the wonderful partners everywhere that we have taken contact with, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to get so far in Brazil and abroad. So the IEA Bioenergy, GBEP, FAPESP, Apex Brazil, CTBE, and many others, not least of them, the wonderful people from the IDG company that have helped us put forward the logistics of this event that is going so well. So there is a lot to do still in the near future. We have engaged the Biofuture platform in the Clean Energy Ministerial, which is to say, in the core forum of energy transition debate. So we are launching in the next week a campaign of the Biofuture platform that will engage the private sector and around inspiring goal of carbon substitution from fossil to renewable carbon. Stay tuned for that. We have work to do on the policy blueprint, whose pilot you have seen presented in this conference, and we'll see new phases going on, and new priorities of the Biofuture platform to be started on sustainability governance. You also hear about that, and finance. So much to do. I am quite glad that I am fortunate to pass this role on not only to the United States as a country, but also personally to my partner and good friend, James Spaeth. So James Spaeth, or Jim, as we know him, works in BITO, the Bioenergy Technologies Office of the US Department of Energy, working on the implementation of integrated biorefineries and advanced biofuels. But especially, he also leads the work of the US Department of Energy in international collaboration in bioenergy. So Jim has already been the chair of the IEA Bioenergy Executive Committee and involved in a wide number of initiatives. Jim has this excellent quality that I think is key for the Biofuture platform, which is articulation. So I trust that we are in very good hands going forward. With this introduction, I thank you for your patience, and I pass the floor to our up-and-coming chair, Jim Spaeth.
Renato, thank you very much. You are indeed leaving very big shoes to fill and have set a very high bar. So thanks to you and the government of Brazil and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Itamaraty. Your hard work has been very fruitful ever since the launch of the Biofuture initiative back in November of 2016. at COP22 in Marrakesh. The progress has been tremendous, and each year building on its strength. I want to congratulate you also, Renato and Glaucia, on this excellent conference. It has had tremendous content, and there's still more to go. I'll just put in a little plug that later on today I am introducing a roundtable 2, the topic on biorefinery. And there are tremendous challenges in biorefineries, as we know. We all need to work together globally to continue to make biorefineries more successful and to lead to deployment worldwide. So beyond thanking Brazil, I also want to thank the co-lead countries that have worked so hard, India, the Netherlands, and Canada, that will be speaking later in the session. I also want to thank, as did Renato, Paulo Frankel in particular, and the IAEA Secretariat for its hard work and excellent facilitation, coordination, and inspiration for the BioFuture platform so far, and helping to set us on a course going forward to even greater achievement. I also want to thank Andrea Rossi, working for the IAEA Secretariat in the background, that's been doing a lot of hard work in helping us get to where we're going and keeping us on track. I also want to mention Dr. Gerard Ostheimer, who some of you may not know, but many do. He is currently the CEO and founder of the BioFuture Workshop, and he's also been tremendously instrumental in getting this campaign, the campaign off the ground that will be kicking off next week. So hopefully you can tune in to SEM 12 next week and hear about the campaign and where we're heading. So thank you for entrusting the U.S. to be the newly elected chair and host country of the BioFuture Platform Initiative. It is indeed an honor and a very high bar, and we take this very seriously. Bioenergy is always local and different in different parts of the world and in each of our countries, but the achievements must truly be global. We must work together to help bioenergy be a major impactful part of reaching the collective 2050 net zero goals. The BioFuture Initiative can be and must be a key enabler in fulfilling these global ambitions by bringing together the strengths of governments, the private sector, and other international organizations and other new stakeholders across the world. You have my deeply held conviction to work closely with Brazil. And Renato, you're not getting off this easy. We expect you to continue to work hard with us, elbow to elbow in the trenches, to make this campaign and SEM initiative ever more successful going forward. We also plan to work on continuing to expand the membership and to make sure that all of our current members have even greater opportunity for involvement in the BioFuture Initiative. We need all of us working together to really have the impact that is required. We also look forward to working closely with other international organizations. Renato mentioned a few, in particular GBEP and FAO, IRENA, the various environmental organizations and NGOs, some that are supportive and some that may not have as high a view on bioenergy. We all need to come together to fulfill the potential of biomass to contribute to the clean energy future. So as the new chair of the BioFuture Initiative, we will work continuously to increase the impact of the BioFuture Initiative, developing sustainable biomass supply chains, exploring and forging consensus on environmental understanding of biomass as a key element of the clean technology revolution, working to speed technology acceleration and collaboration to hasten bioenergy development, and to continue to engage with the private sector to bring that ever more into the campaign. We know that they are an invaluable partner and really the long-term enabler of the biofuture, biodevelopment, bioeconomy, and biofuels. We also will be working hard in the area of green financing to enable deployment and replication around the globe. And finally, we know that we need to do a lot of hard work on policy convergence to enable success. We need to find out what is working best in parts of the world and try to replicate that, knowing that the appropriate policies may be different in different regions and different parts of the world. So thank you very much for including me in this platform and this panel. It's indeed an honor. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my fellow co-lead member, Dr. Sangeeta Kishore. Sangeeta is a senior scientist and director in the Department of Biotechnology in the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Government of Industry. She has also been instrumental in leading other initiatives, including in the mission innovation area, a new initiative on sustainable aviation fuels, and exploring a new initiative on the bioeconomy. So Sangeeta, the floor is yours, and thank you so much in advance for all of the contributions of India and as a great partner now and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Renato, co-chair, and all fellow panelists, Paulo, Keys, David, and all participants who have joined us today for this wrap-up session. All sessions are very important part of this Biofuture platform, and they have been very thoughtfully designed. So my congratulations to Renato and the entire team for this excellent and heavy content. As you all know, bioenergy is very important part of clean energy basket, and its role is very important for clean energy transition. This bioenergy cannot not only tackle the environment concern but also can significantly contribute to rural economy, social development, and energy security of developing countries like India. There has been the one of the important session on next slide please, technology push policies, and supporting the bioeconomy innovation was very important, one of the panels. As we know, both demand pull and technology push factors are important drivers of innovation in the biofuel sector. For example, in first generation biofuel, the drivers were basically found to be technologies are found to be mainly driven by quantity and price based demand pull policies. On the contrary, for advanced biofuels technologies are very important and technology push is required. These are key to accelerate innovations to meet the competitiveness and to meet the market demands. The diverse public support instruments have different impact in different countries. Some of the technologies are readily available. For example, again, first ethanol, which is coming from the biomass. However, sustainability and competitiveness are very important for these biofuels, bioethanol. Hence, the R&D and innovation plays very important role in bioenergy development. Many countries have good national policies to promote the R&D and also deployment of biofuels for both feedstock development and conversion technologies. In this session, there were very eminent speakers. The Eduardo from Brazil, he has spoken excellently, talked about the successful ethanol blending program in Brazil and various instruments to support biotechnology platforms, including the infrastructure that was created. Whereas USA and Jim has spoken and he has mentioned that what are the clean energy targets and the goals for 2030 to set up 4 to 5 demonstration plants by refinery programs, including the US has also done very good job in creating sector specific consortia. It is very novel technology and very useful to engage industries in specific activities. He also talked about the new pathways to produce aviation fuel from ethanol, which Lanzatech and some of the industries are taking initiative. If we talked about India's things, there are a wide range of schemes available for R&D support, right from proof of concept to pre-commercialization stage. There are several schemes. We have set up Center of Excellence, demonstration plants, public-private partnership projects, and fellowship schemes for human resource development. I would like to mention that India has recently Union Budget announced setting up of National Hydrogen Mission from green sources, wind, solar, and biomass. Hence, there are a lot of opportunities for innovation, introducing hydrogen from both biomass and through biological routes like photo and dark fermentation, etc. I'm also proud to mention that a very good ecosystem created by Government of India to support startups and SMEs and both public-private partnership projects to reduce, which help to reduce the risk of high-cost projects. As mentioned by Peter Coleman, UK, the biomass innovation is extremely important to meet the net zero goals. Can we shift to next slide, please? Why technology innovation is important? Yeah, I would like to mention that mention the case of 2G ethanol. In India, this is the policy 2018, which was the revised policy, which is very encouraging. We have a good ambitious target of ethanol blending 10% by 2022 and 20% by 2030. It was earlier 2030 and now which has been advanced by 5 years and made it 2025. It's heartening to say that India has made good progress in blending. Currently, the blending has reached about 8% last 3 years. However, this is achieved from mostly from the first generation ethanol, that is from molasses, sugar, and these things. There is definitely a good market pull, a good offtake policy. There are oil marketing companies to buy it and mix it, blend it in the petroleum. The feedstock availability and again sustainability, these are the important challenges. Hence, there is urgent need for innovations to produce advanced biofuels at reduced cost using various waste feedstock, including the municipal solid waste, etc. Therefore, government has been promoting R&D and also provided viability gap funding to set up both demonstration as well as commercial plants in order to lower the risk of technologies, and new technologies and investments. Scientists and researchers, both from academia as well as industry, need to take up translational research and fill the gap in scale up and execution for commercialization. It's very important. Next slide. A technology push policy can next slide please. Technology policy push can help in creating suitable infrastructure, building pilot plants, creating skilled human resource, and establishing linkages between publicly funded labs and private sectors. Further, international collaboration provide good opportunities to share common challenges and address those collectively. Learning experience from each other and exchange of knowledge can also contribute to accelerate innovations. And I would say that the BioFuture platform and Mission Innovation are the good examples and platforms available for biofuel sector, both for innovations as well as uh, policy sharing, and both are complementary to each other. The virtual platform, because of COVID, all these virtual platforms are also making these processes easier. Knowledge exchange is happening from the site, sitting from your home. And though visits have greater impact, but we can also take a good benefit of these virtual platforms for not only for meetings but also sharing knowledge. We can develop the common platform where the information also can be shared. Now it is important that we all should look more value addition to biomass and explore bio-based chemicals and materials. And I definitely feel that biotechnology can play a very important role in industrial biotechnology sector, and this can contribute to economy a great. Next slide, please. Under Mission Innovation, India has proposed to integrate production of biofuels and with bio-based products through biorefinery approach. The major focus and thrust has been to reduce the cost of biofuels, advanced biofuels definitely, to make it competitive to fossil fuel close to 15%. And the proposed mission also aims to develop and demonstrate the new technologies for at least three bio-based chemicals or polymers. We want to develop and demonstrate this technology. This, of course, it is possible only through collaboration with supporting members and international partners like IE and ARENA. Can next slide, please. Now, the proposed mission would provide a good platform for stakeholders to connect, contribute, and demonstrate pilot scale technologies which can easily be deployed and take up by a platform like Biofuture platform, where the goals are very common for bio-based to promote biofuels as well as bio-based chemicals and materials. I won't go into detail, but let's next slide, please. So before ending my talk, I would like to reiterate that bioenergy plays a very important role to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. For example, aviation, marine, and long distance, like truck and all, or even railways have good potential, subject to increased competitiveness. For making them commercially viable, greater investments are required to accelerate innovations towards development of sustainable feedstock and cost-effective convergent technologies. And the most important is, again, accelerated R&D is crucial to bridge the innovation gap for accelerated bioeconomy. With this, I would thank. Next slide, please. I would thank again once again Renato and organizers. Last but not least, I would like to conclude with the quote from Prime Minister Modi ji that innovation no longer remains a choice but has become an imperative. Thank you so much for your attention, and we would be happy to. I would be happy to take up questions.
Thank you,
I would
Sangeeta.
like,
This is,
yeah,
go ahead. You were saying?
no, thanks.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you for this very comprehensive report on what happened in the session on technology push policies. To the audience, if you are interested, this session is full in Huva. You can access it and still engage with the speakers with questions through our system. So this is one of the advantages of using the system. Thank you also, Sangeeta, for highlighting this is a very profound quote. So it is an imperative to innovate, and I'll come back to this subject, and also for highlighting the fact that these new tools that have become popular in the pandemic they have their bright side in helping to accelerate knowledge exchange by allowing many things to happen in the comfort of our homes. So I would like to introduce now, moving from the technology push to another aspect of technologies, the deployment of bioenergy to market. So this is a key component. Basically, the policies are divided into technology push and what people call demand pull policies. And to talk about that, Paulo Frankel, our facilitator and the coordinator of the Biofuture Platform Initiative in the SAM, who is also one of our keynote speakers. His keynote speech on the IEA roadmap to net zero in 2050 is brilliant. So please go and help that. And Paulo is here today to talk about the policy blueprint, one of the instruments of the Biofuture platform that analyzes policies for market deployment of bioenergy. Paulo.
Thank you, Renato, for the kind introduction. And before starting, please allow me to, on behalf of the entire International Energy Agency, to thank the Brazilian government first for its leadership, for bringing the Biofuture platform to the level of today, and also for trusting the IEA and giving us the role of facilitator. And at the same time, I would like to welcome the United States as the new chair. And of course, the IEA will be honored to continue serving as facilitator to the platform and coordinator of the SEM initiative under your guidance. Now, Renato, as you said, the webinar which I was chairing was on the Biofuture policy blueprint exercise. This is a major objective of the Biofuture activities, which is to assess and evaluate policies based on facts. The narrative around bioenergy, as we all know, remains very controversial still, and sometimes very polarized. And indeed, we miss the fact that bioenergy already today is is really a giant of renewables and a giant in the decarbonization already today, and that this role is simply going to need to expand in the future. But still, the policy objective of this exercise is to have an evaluation methodology based on quantitative indicators, both of effectiveness of bioenergy policies, for instance, how much is the share on total final consumption in a given country, and of economic efficiency, for instance, the marginal cost of CO2 abatement. In order to assess the policies, to compare the policies, and to learn and optimize at home. Compare between countries and learn and optimize. Now, we had a very interesting and constructive session on different approaches. As a background, it was the need to accelerate the deployment of bioenergy, which is increasing steadily, but at a pace which is definitely off track from any sustainable development scenario target and benchmark levels by 2030. To give an idea, the IEA thinks, and also there is a need for doubling the contribution of bioenergy as a whole and contribution of biofuels in transport by 2030, just to give an example. So Dr. Adam Brown from the facilitating team presented the work on the policy blueprint and the results so far, and included a number of quantitative indicators to assess the policy impacts, plus a number 6 areas of policy priority dimension, which are the place that bioenergy policies play in the overall policy framework, policy clarity and certainty, which is crucial to attract investment, market access, financial support, sustainability, and last but certainly not least, support for innovation, as we have just heard from Dr. Sangeeta Kasture. And highlighting that actually it is the portfolio approach rather than a single policy, for instance, incentives, that is a key for success or for failure. Now, this presentation was then complemented by other more detailed presentations on the 3 pilot countries, namely Brazil, the Netherlands, and United States. So Dr. Eloisa Esteves emphasized the policy evolution in Brazil, in particular highlighting the role of Renova Bio that will increase the production of ethanol and biodiesel, and it will be interesting to see if it can also promote a wider range of fuels and process improvements and applications in new sectors like marine or aviation. Mr. Kees Quant in the Netherlands highlighted that policy are driving a rapid increase in the use of biofuels, with a particular emphasis on the use of fuels from wastes and residues, which is of course a reference to sustainability issues in a small country like the Netherlands, and demanding minimum standards for greenhouse gas reductions. The main policy driving this is a blending obligations, with the levels already established for 2030, which is a very important tool for the policy certainty. Now, in the longer term, The emphasis in the Netherlands is switching to priorities related to the use of bioresources more in general for applications also to material use and fuels and not just for energy. In the United States, the renewable fuel standard and the California low carbon fuel standards are driving increased use of biofuels. And Dr. Michael Wang from the Argonne National Laboratory highlighted that recent developments have significantly increased the greenhouse gas benefits, even from first generation ethanol or biodiesel. Now, to conclude, we believe in general that the policy blueprint can help the countries to understand the effectiveness and efficiency of policies and to introduce more ambitious and effective policies to also enlarge the applications to other uses. For the moment, the results are on transport biofuels, but they will be extended to other energy uses and ultimately possibly to the biomaterials, obviously taking into account that there is much less experience in this field. Now, just a few concluding remarks. It was highlighted that there is no one fits all solutions. While the priority dimensions are the same, we have to recognize that different countries are at different status and progress of technologies. There are different drivers, different local resources. But overall, it was stressed that the policies should strive for improved greenhouse gas performance over the life cycle, to foster innovation, to foster competition, but at the same time, take into account the diversity and also the specificities, in particular when it comes to push for innovation. And I will just repeat what with new solutions that are far away from cost competitiveness, there is a need for a certain degree of technology-specific policy incentives in an overall later.
Paulo, I think we lost you for a second, but most of your messages were well taken.
I think I was just concluding, and I was just saying thank you for your attention. So after the technology push, this was my last part. Recognizing technology diversity, recognizing different status of progress, but in an overall consistent and holistic policy approach. That's the succinct policy message.
Very good. Thank you, Paulo, for this. The policy blueprint is a major undertaking from the Biofuture platform. So I guess now I pass on the floor to my co-moderator, Jim Spaeth, to introduce the next speaker, who is a surprise.
Apologize that I've been losing connection here a little bit. So, Renato, please help me. Who is our next speaker? Because I've been in and out for 15 minutes.
I'm sorry, Jim,
is it you
were
Renato,
supposed to,
or is it?
Yeah, you were supposed to introduce myself. Yes, I'm embarrassed to say.
Let me do that. It's my pleasure. Please let me do that. Thank you. Okay, well, now back, and I apologize. It's our technology is not always perfect, but to reintroduce to you our friend and colleague, Ronaldinho, who has been the Biofuture chair since its inception in 2016, and not only that, but really he has been the inspiration and I think the creator, the ideation behind the Biofuture platform. I know we head back to the spring of 2016 when he approached the U.S. and others in the U.S. to talk about this new thing form, and I really didn't know what it was or what its purpose was going to be. But he convinced me that there's really an excellent role for the Biofuture platform, a needed role, one of raising the identity, the awareness, the knowledge of our global leaders about the importance of energy in terms of its ability to contribute. Renato started out as a journalist and a communicator with a master's degree in international policy, or excuse me, international diplomacy from Rio Branco Institute in 2005. And he has served in Brazil and abroad, focusing on multilateral governance, negotiation, and process management. And you can see how all of these skills have come to play and been integral in his excellent role as the chair here. And since 2015, he's been in charge of the Division of Energy Progress in the Itamaraty, Foreign Affairs, dealing with international policy dialogue and cooperating in energy transition. So, Renato, again, I can't say enough. Obrigado, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim. That's too kind. I'm here back again to discuss the session which I moderated on sustainability governance and biomass quantification. So this was the live session on the first day of the conference. And one thing that is important to say before I get into the content of the session itself is that the purpose of the session is to kickstart a new priority process for the Biofuture platform on trying to achieve a greater level of consensus on these aspects. So sustainability, how much biomass for bioenergy, for biomaterials can we count on for the next decades? Will it be able to be developed sustainably in enough quantities to fulfill the targets that we have for climate? We have now the IEA roadmap calling for 100 exajoules of modern sustainable bioenergy by 2050. I would say that is more to the low end of what's possible, but this is still an open question. There are those who believe this is already too much and could have negative impacts. So the purpose of this process and this panel that I'm talking about is the first step in this process is to bring stakeholders from different approaches and build a process that is very well organized and evidence-based, so that at the end of this line, even if it takes a couple years or more, and Jim, I'm very happy that you will be the chair during this period and not me. At this time, this thorny issue would have gathered at least some consensus on what are the ways, the practices to incentivize, how to control, how to govern, so we can be sure that this biomass is available and minimize any negative impacts. So this is the crux of the panel, and we were able to count on top-notch speakers. So first, Gerard Osheimer from Biofuture Workshop, Jim already introduced, talked about Gary in his previous speech. He was articulating the Biofuture campaign with the private sector and put clearly forward the demand from the private sector to have this predictability. So they wish to know, in order for the investments to happen, so what exactly can we count on in terms of biomass? How much exactly? What's the predictability that they need to count on for investments and contracts? So this is something that the private sector is looking forward to us to help solve. And the message was well taken from Jerry. So after this, we had representatives of different circles that will help us with this task in the next few years. So first of them was the Executive Secretary of the Global Bioenergy Partnership, Michela Moresi. She leads in this capacity the GBEP, an international initiative that has worked on widely recognized indicators for sustainability. And she was explaining the advantages of the indicators and also the lessons learned during this process, and highlighted some important things, among which that sustainable development has 3 dimensions. So not only environmental, but also economic and social, that are taken into consideration in the indicators and should be taken into consideration in our own exercise along with GBEP and others. So after Michela, my friend and co-chair of this conference, Professor Glaucia Souza, the coordinator of the FAPEST Bioenergy Research Program, she talked about her experience in coordinating the scope report on bioenergy and sustainability. It's a major report that took more than 100 scientists from many countries working on this. And she highlighted some of the conclusions on and put them on a world map, easy to see, about quantification, just how much land of each type, just how much underused or degraded pasture the world has that could be used to develop more sustainable bioenergy, for instance. So a very interesting presentation that gave us a good idea on the findings from academia, from many places on this thorny issue. Complementary to that was also Professor Keith Klein from the Oak Ridge Laboratory in the USA. Complemented Glaucia's presentation very well by detailing many aspects of land management and community engagement and integrated forestry with bioenergy, many approaches that can help in approaching this issue. So Keith was also very keen to highlight the fact that working from bottom up, so local communities have a good sense, can have a good sense of what's available in their area and how best to develop it, then abstract models and global assessments of biomass. So this is also a message. And finally, last but not least, we moved on to Inge Stupak, professor of the University of Copenhagen, who recently published a very thoughtful paper on how to create governance processes on sustainability. And she used the case of bioenergy as the main example that can generate trust. So the issue of trust that she highlighted was also one of the hot topics. Many questions from the audience on how to build trust, how to engage with stakeholders that are initially skeptical on the issue or that have negative stances. So this is a challenge, and the recommendations were: be concrete, stay on topic, stay on the evidence, and be transparent. So there are models that Professor Inge explained and talked about, models of processes. So you have also to focus on the quality of the process and not only of the outcomes, even if some of the stakeholders don't like or don't agree with the outcome at the end of the day, they would be convinced that it was evidence-based, transparent, and that everyone was able to have their say, and their say were considered according to objective principles. So those are the presentations, and I believe some of the aspects, if I can summarize, involved just some of the aspects in this hard process. Everyone recognized it was a hard undertaking that we would be approaching. So sustainability, governance, and biomass quantification, finding agreement on those, that it was hard, but it was feasible. And there was also agreement to embark on this process in cooperation. So those representing institutions were readily available to cooperate in the next years. So this was an important message. And there was also agreement about the need. So there is a need for this to happen. So the current situation where there is widely different views on just how much bioenergy can we have sustainably. This cannot stay because it is paralyzing investments, paralyzing development, paralyzing policy in many cases. So as I was saying, some of the key aspects that will need to be approached is this aspect of scale and the whole issue on how to approach it via global assessments and local assessments. I still believe there needs to be some kind of mix to those. No, the issue of scale is also applicable to governance, not only to quantification. So is the proper scale at a global level, national, or a landscape and project level? And perhaps the answer is also a mix of that. There is the aspect of how to tie in this governance with policies that provide incentives. So it is not just about controlling, it's about providing incentives. Examples that were mentioned are the LCFS policy in California, RenovaBio in Brazil, as instances that reward sustainability. So they control and then reward with the proper incentives and rewards for the environmental services provided. So the use is also another aspect, how you control on the use. So when you look at the sustainability of forestry or a mixed food forestry system or territory, soil conservation, biodiversity, do you have to look only for bioenergy or bio-based economy uses, or is it more useful to look at themselves instead of singling out the use? So this is also something that the panel prefer to take the broader view. So you have to ensure that forests are managed sustainably, regardless of what portion is used for one end or another, and so on and so forth. And finally, if this was complex enough, there is also the issue of measuring land use change or preempt land use change. So the issue of ILUC modeling was also approached, and from the poll and also the interventions in the panel, it seems that the preferred approach, at least in our context here, was that to ensure that policies can help prevent and mitigate undesirable outcomes in land use change, rather than use models, in the words of Keith Klein, that you can get any result you want because there are so many different assumptions that you can put in that you can basically arrive at any answer that you want and be able to justify it, but also the opposite answer just by adjusting a little bit the assumptions. So those models are perhaps not the best way, according to the views of the panel, to deal with this, and instead using policies that try to enforce the land outcomes that we want. So those are a few of the aspects here. It is long, and this is to get you an idea of the session, which I recommend you to attend. So back, I think I can now, having said that, already introduce our next speaker here. I have the next will be my good friend and colleague Kees Quant. So Kees is, besides being a good partner in the Biofuture Platform Core Group, he's also the senior expert on bioenergy and circular bio-based economy in the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RVO. And he's also a good link to researchers and industry around the world to help develop the circular bio-based economy and bioenergy in the Netherlands and abroad. Kees, like James Pave, has also striding the circles of academia and policymaking and governments, and is leading figure in the IA Bioenergy Network, the Technology Collaboration Program, and has a very respected voice in many circles. So I'm happy to introduce Kees Quant, who has moderated this session on transportation. This is another hot topic in all these circles. Transportation, what's the role of bioenergy in the face of also electrification? So Kees, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Renato, for these kind words. Yes, I had the honor to chair this session. I've done that together with Professor Horta Nogueira from Brazil. And the first thing we have done is to look at the criteria. So how can we compare the different options for making our transport system more sustainable? So we agreed that it was about climate change, so greenhouse gas reduction. It's also about economics. We don't want the consumer too much to pay. It's also about, let's say, sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, it's not only the sustainability of the biofuels, but it's also the sustainability of electricity production, because there are also a lot of, for example, fine metals are used, scarce metals are used in batteries, for example. So how are they harvested? One has to look at that as well. And also we have to look at other emissions. So for example, tailpipe emissions, not just from cars, but also when the electricity comes from let's say, power plant, what are the emissions from this power plant? And also finally, we have to look at public perception. What does the public understand and what does the public not understand? And there's also the time issue. What do we know now? And what do we know 10 or 20 years from now? That is also different. New technology will come in, innovation will influence this market for transportation. So it was very interesting. As a starting point, we had, let's say, different countries. Brazil is already at 50% renewable fuels in the transport sector. It's mainly bioethanol that is used there. Whereas US and Europe, they are at about 10% biofuels in the transport sector. And we are also looking at Brazil, where the growth really is in flex fuel cars. 85% is there used for flex fuel cars. And from that starting point, you then have the question, okay, are we going for electricity or will we continue with biofuels, and how will we do that? Whereas in Europe, we are, and also in the US, we are at 10%. And actually at this moment in Europe, a lot of car manufacturers are now focusing on electric cars. So what is a wise thing to do? So we had 5 very good presentations on this topic. Presentations comparing, let's say, the different options, but also the different scenarios, and also the technologies and the technology development. So I strongly recommend everyone to look at, let's say, the presentations within our session and look at all these, let's say, different comparisons. So what is, I will give you now the overall conclusions. I think what is quite important to start with is when we look at, let's say, sustainable mobility and also about acceleration, sustainable mobility. The first thing to think of is probably, well, energy savings, but also energy efficiency. So the question is, what transport system do we use? And do we have to travel? Yes, so for example, now we are just sitting here behind our screen and even communicating. Maybe this could happen in the future more often. So that's one option. The other option, of course, is public transport, trains, metros, railways, fast trains. Let's say within Europe, maybe to a distance of up to 1,000 kilometers, trains could be a solution for the future rather than flying around from spot to spot. And within a city, I would like to really propose a very nice Dutch example, and that is use the bicycle. You don't have to do everything with your car. You can either walk or use the bicycle to get somewhere. So there are a lot of options to make the transport system more sustainable than just talking about electricity and talking about biofuels. Because the second option, electrification, is of course available. New cars are being built, but there is a lack of, let's say, infrastructure to bring electricity to the cars, and electric cars only make sense when they use renewable electricity. And we have a huge shortage of renewable electricity, at least in Europe. In Brazil, it may be different because you have more hydropower, but here in Europe there is a huge shortage of renewable electricity. So this needs to be implemented. We need an infrastructure for renewable electricity. And then we also need people who buy an electric car. At this moment, for example, in the Netherlands, it's about 20% of the consumers buy a new electric car. So it's growing, but of course it's not the complete market. And why do people not do that? Well, because they have to power their car. So where can they do that? They don't see a place to power their car, so they will just go for using petrol. So that's, let's say, infrastructure and electrification are quite crucial. It can happen, but there are limitations. So when we talk about renewable fuels, so biofuels, bioethanol, biodiesel, or others, we see that this can be implemented, and this can be done quite quickly. Yes, we need, of course, the biofuel producers, we need enough factories, but we have seen here in Europe that this can be increased quite a lot. And here in Rotterdam Harbor, we have a lot of big factories producing fuels. But the question about the biofuels, of course, it's especially here in Europe, it's the question of sustainability. So for that reason, there is a growth in biofuels, but our parliament, the European Parliament, but also the national parliaments don't like to see a large growth of let's say, biofuels. So there is a limitation. And all in all, in this situation, it's not possible to reach our 55% greenhouse gas target reduction in the year 2030. So we have to see to look for solutions. So mainly what is happening at this moment is also to look for the e-fuels. So fuels produced from, again, renewable electricity, and then hydrogen, and then with CO2 produce this fuel. But even then, it's very costly, and it still remains to be seen if we can reach the goal that we have set here in Europe for the year 2030. So personally, but this is not a political answer, but personally, I think we should try to use more biofuels. At least in the Netherlands, we are going beyond the 10% and 14% of renewable biofuels. And especially for the future, we see a huge increase in aviation fuels and in marine fuels. So that's what the market for the biofuels will be in the next years to come in order to make aviation and marine transport sustainable. So finally, we have innovation. And several presentations in our session were about new and innovative systems. For example, to use the fuel cell, the SOFC, so not just to run it directly on hydrogen, but for example, run it on bioethanol. So you can then see bioethanol as stored hydrogen and use that as a fuel for this engine. And so that's one way of, let's say, looking at it. It could also be other ways of, let's say, improved engines to improve the efficiency and use other fuels as well. So all in all, our conclusion is that, well, biofuels play already a good role in Brazil, play a growing role in Europe, but both will be needed. So biofuels and electricity both will be needed to realize our targets for climate change. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and just as a final word, I would like to say thank you to Renato Godinha. You have been an excellent leader and also very inspirational chairman of the Biofuture platform. So we really have put the bioeconomy on the agenda. So thank you very much for that, and I congratulate Spade with his new position and wish him also a lot of success in the follow-up actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kees. Thank you for those words and for your presentation. So you covered a lot of ground, and transportation is one sector where you touched on all the other issues, so sustainability, innovation, policies, and all that. So it was very interesting. I would like to come back to this in our Q&A and debate here. So thank you, and also for reminding us of the Dutch solution to transport the bicycle. And I remember, if I may add this personal note, when we were in a conference, I don't remember where it was, I think in the US, and before the meeting even started, very early at 8, you will have already ride in your bicycle, I think it were more than 30 kilometers. So indeed, this is a demonstration of the Dutch solution. I'm not sure that everyone can do as you do, but that was quite impressive. So, and that before 8 a.m. With this, I will pass the floor to Davin O'Grady. Davin is the manager of a technical and policy support team within the Clean Fuels branch in Natural Resources Canada, and as such, also representing Canada in the Biofuture Platform core group, where he helped devise and put forward the Clean Energy Ministerial Initiative of the Biofuture Platform and now the campaign. Davin has spent his public service career working on fuels, technical and policy issues, petroleum, biofuels, on many different issues, and also was part of the development of the Canada's Clean Fuel Standard, which is similar to Brazil's Renova Bio and the Californian LCFS. It is a groundbreaking policy on for environmental performance of biofuels. So Davin is here to talk about another crucial aspect of the bioeconomy, which is finance. So green finance, public finance, private finance. There was a whole panel dedicated to this, and Davin will tell us about it.
Thank you very much, Renato. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with my international colleagues to help close out this successful event. So in the Financing the Bioeconomy session, we heard from a diverse set of speakers covering experts in investment funds, banks, and other financial institutions. So several common threads emerged, and I'll speak to those. All the speakers, excuse me, all the speakers cited the bioeconomy as playing a significant role over the coming decades, and in particular, they placed a lot of emphasis on the role of nature-based solutions. So the ability for the forestry and ag and land use to capture CO2 emissions. The interest in the bioeconomy is following strongly with the announcements from many countries, financial institutions, and the private sector committing to various net zero targets over the coming decades. We're seeing major capital flow towards ESG as it has become a global trend and more prevalent as we move forward. So within this, sustainable finance mechanisms are being sought by many different parties, and this will continue to accelerate into the future. Some speakers spoke to what is needed are stronger financing and funding signals from all stakeholders involved to ensure the foundation is laid today for the future years. With these signals, developing countries can then leverage the signals to prioritize policies and regulations. This then sends an appropriate signal to the private sector so they can plan out their investments in the short term. Aside from discussion of green bonds and other financing measures, there was a strong continued theme towards bioeconomy projects and needing to ensure that they are done in a sustainable manner. And that's from the harvest and use of the feedstock to protecting biodiversity. I don't think there was any doubt that these projects can be realized successfully, but that sustainability metrics need to be prioritized in all cases. And I think this links strongly to the sustainability session that was also held. So aside from common themes that were discussed, speakers also spoke to what is working well today and also pointed to factors and challenges that remain to be overcome in the short term and long term if we want to see the ability of the financing community to continue to grow in the bioeconomy. So what is working well today? Well, I think we heard from many positive factors so far. There was reference to climate fund investments being a success with more than 300 projects across many countries. And this goes from contributing to broader clean projects such as clean power capacity, more energy access, and as well as providing climate resilience projects. We also heard of specific examples of projects being funded that include forest products and residues being used more effectively to lower GHGs, produce energy, and create economic impacts. Some speakers referenced the recent IEA report, and they estimate that $60 billion is needed by 2030 to keep within the 2-degree scenario, and that green bonds can play and will play a significant role in achieving this. One speaker mentioned the rapid growth in the green bond market, having reached $1.3 trillion just in 2020, and with a continued forecasted projected to increase. However, despite what is working well today, the speakers felt that there are challenges that remain. For example, investors perceive biomass projects as complex. And so how can the financing community and government and private sector communicate the message more clearly about the benefits of biomass-based projects? So there was a feeling that banks can play a stronger role in supporting bioeconomy assets as well as social assets. Several speakers highlighted the fact that stronger, clearer communication of the benefits of the projects, both environmental and economic, related to the bioeconomy, is required such that it is better understood by all parties. So through this greater clarity of communication, there is a sense that more bonds, green bonds, and other financing mechanisms could become available. As I mentioned, there is a need to focus more on the social and societal benefits from bioeconomy and nature-based projects, as it is often those in rural locations that are impacted. And lastly, I think it was clear that there is an abundance of biomass available across many jurisdictions, but there is a need to put a meaningful price on carbon to make the circular economy truly work. And lastly, some speakers also spoke to new solutions or tools that have become available to help address some of these challenges. The speaker from the Climate Bonds Initiative spoke to the first climate taxonomy report that was first published in 2013 and is regularly updated. So this report indicates or provides indication and criteria for eligible related projects and sectors in the bioeconomy. So for example, the report provides criteria for how bioenergy projects can be successfully funded and looks to criteria such as sustainability of feedstocks, life cycle assessment to determine carbon intensity values, as well as climate resilience plans. The representative from Canada raised the idea of using credit rating systems to reduce complexity for investors. So he spoke to investments by the Canadian and US governments that have helped support the development of standardized tools for biomass in order to create biomass supply chain risk standards. And what these do is provide a blueprint for the capital markets to better understand the risks, how to mitigate them, and then structure capital around them. So these are just some of the solutions and tools that were raised during the session. So overall, I think there was a sense that while challenges remain to increasing awareness and education within the finance community, to the significant opportunities that the bioeconomy and nature-based solutions can offer, I think that there has been progress made, and there is optimism that all stakeholders recognize the need to work collaboratively to advance not only the environmental benefits, but the economic benefits that the bioeconomy holds. And we, as members of the BBEST-Biofuture initiative, we will be working collectively to strengthen the financing within the bio community with our global government partners, but also industry collaborators as well. And as I said, most notably, this will be a continued theme as we build on the momentum from launching the SEM initiative, the BioFuture initiative last year, to the upcoming launch of the SEM BioFuture campaign at the upcoming SEM in just a short time. So to conclude, I would invite you all to watch the presentations from the financing plenary session for further details and information. I hope that you'll find the information insightful and useful as options to grow financing within the bioeconomy sector. And with that, I'll turn it back to Renato for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Devin, for your presentation. It was very comprehensive. So this is a key aspect also, getting finance to the bioeconomy, and you were very comprehensive on the things of the speakers, raised a number of issues that I hope we can come back to during the moderation. And now we have our last presentation from our collection of the best sessions in the conference, and the pleasure goes to my friend Jim Spaeth again. So he doesn't need an introduction anymore. Jim will talk about the session that he chaired on the future of biorefining. So modern biorefineries are also very important in the way that they are flexible, integrated, can use different supplies of biomass and produce different outcomes and products. And Jim chaired a session on this aspect and will tell us about it.
Thank you very much. I had to switch technology. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, I had the pleasure of chairing this session on this very important and challenging topic. I had 4 speakers. They included first Paulo Corvo from Clariant, and Sarah Gallo from the Biotechnology Industries Organization, known as BIO, B-I-O, and then Jorge Soto from Braskem, Brazil, and last but not least, Dr. Luc van Wonderland from the University of Limerick in Ireland. So each of them pointed out the different challenges from their perspective, but the challenges are great. First of all, the technology is difficult, and the funding support has been, I would say, somewhat steady, but could always use more, and could be more government support would greatly enable the technology development. We have a combination of challenges. We need to prove that the technology can work and does work reliably and efficiently. Kudos to Clariant for their first commercial plants and subsequent licensees for other commercial plants. They're really setting a great bar for others to follow. Beyond the technology, of course, there is the financing and policy. So we really need all of these to work together to enable success. There were initially in I would say the 2000s, the first decade, there was strong support for integrated biorefineries and for biotechnologies in the bioenergy space. But there was a lack of quick uptake in terms of success. And I think part of that was ambition and unrealistic expectations, actually, that these technologies could be matured from R&D through piloting and demonstration on to commercialization in a matter of years. But if we look to our colleagues in the oil and gas industry, they've had 150 years of technology development to help them optimize their systems and make them super efficient. And it's well recognized in that industry that new technology development and implementation is more of a multi-decade, really a multi-decade undertaking. And we've seen that similarly in bioenergy, especially when it comes to biofuels.
Jim, we are losing your signal. Let's wait for it to stabilize. Well, I think we lost Jim. Jim, can you hear us? Well, we had a technological problem. I hope we can come back to the issue of biorefineries during our Q&A, and hope that Jim can solve this problem that it's been nagging him since the start of the panel. So sorry for that. I would like to move to our debate here. There is first announcing to the audience that there is a poll put up in the Hoover system. Please put forward your questions and also answer the poll, which relates to what is the most important component in accelerating the bioeconomy development. Is it market policies? Is it technology? Is it finance? And other aspects. So I take notice that Jim is back. So before we go to Q&A, let's try to get back to him.
My apologies. I don't know what's going on today. So as I was saying, and I'll wrap up quickly, the technology has been challenging, but it is now, there's a great deal of effort on technology development and fairly robust funding. I've lost it. If you can hear me, that we need a combination of.
You're back.
Okay, I will wrap up very quickly. Apologies again for my problems, but suffice to say that we need to continue on our path of investments in technology, increasing the interest and confidence in the financing community, making sure that we have robust technology, robust policy, and finally, to make sure that we work on the challenging issue of sustainability, that we all know that these technologies can be done sustainably, but we need to work to increase the confidence in the sustainability aspects and approaches for bioenergy in general. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And one message that you had, that this biorefining technology is challenging, and the comparison with the refineries in the oil sector that had many decades to perfect themselves, so there were high expectations. This was very clear in Brazil with the second generation ethanol refineries that were coming online, and people expected they to operate at full capacity in the first 1 or 2 years. And lots of technological learning had to happen before that, and they're just now reaching what they intended for, I would say, 5 years ago. But this is a process that we need to go through and understand. So this is an important message. By the way, biorefining is not the only technology that we are still having challenges with, as also demonstrated. So webcasting has also some ways to improve around the world.
Yes.
So let's get back to all our speakers here. We have questions from the audience already, but I would like to start with some views of my own. And one of the first, I think the first, I will put some questions in, first related to technology. So Jim was also speaking about technology, and I want to go back to Dr. Sangeeta Kastur, who has dealt with the policy on technology push. And now I had lost my notes when I was presenting here, and now I can properly go through her extensive curriculum as a director, a scientist and director of in the Department of Biotechnology. She's associated with the Ministry of Science and Technology in the government of India for 10 years and promoting innovations and cutting-edge research in bioenergy, environment, biotechnology, and secondary agriculture in various R&D projects in the government of India. So Sangeeta is leading India's participation in mission innovation as well for the mission Bioeconomy. As she said, they are very complementary initiatives. The mission innovation will be key to unlock more R&D investments in the bioeconomy. So, and I'm very glad that she's also part of the Biofuture core group and helping to lead India's participation here. And Sangeeta, I would like to ask you, so there was a lot in your presentation from the panel that is related to state action. So not only international collaboration, but state action as well. So technologies that are very novel and that they are not proven commercially and involve a lot of risk. So what is the role of state policies in supporting those, to what extent? So in the panel, but also in the experience of India, where I've seen that state companies that import and refine oil are also leading the way for next generation biorefineries.
Yes, thank you so much, Renato, for the kind introduction again and the big profile. Let me first congratulate you and also for the incredible job you have done under the leadership for the Biofuture platform. And again, once again, on behalf of India, I welcome James Smith, US, as a chair, and we look forward to work together India's support for this Biofuture platform transfer policy. Yes, technologies, definitely there are a lot of things, innovations happening, the biomass diversification in different advanced biofuels. But you have rightly said some of the technologies are not matured. We have different schemes, even other countries also. China also, I missed to mention earlier, China also has taken a lot of biorefinery approaches and different aspects using biomass for biohydrogen, butanol, drop-in fuels. So there are different routes are available, both biochemical and thermochemical routes. The in terms of immature technology, because we need to build confidence in order to attract the investment from private sector. So the building confidence is very important in the technology aspect. So for that, we have been pushing to scale up because we have definitely schemes for accelerated translational programs called ATGC that is specifically mentioned for taking up the technologies from TRL level 4 to TRL level 6, 7, 8 up to that. So we are now targeting now a lot of knowledge has been generated. There are so many publications, patents, but now this is a time to take this technology to next level. And there are several challenges in scale up. We need to understand, and there the role of industry is also very important. Government specific, I will talk about the Indian government. we do understand that there are risks associated in these high cost projects for scaling up investment in the setting up commissioning of plant. So government has come out with the viability gap funding. So what it happens that some part of fund is provided by government, and then there is a consortia, industries put up some interest. So based on the cost, at least 15%, 20% contribution is given by taken by government, and this is to encourage the industries and also to de-risk the project cost and technology risk. So these things are available and government is pushing, and also there are some government from other countries also I have seen, so they have also such reports. And we also, I urge scientists from on this platform that they need to take lot of risk, because they have to come out of the comfort zone and take risk to put up the for taking scale up and have robust technology which can work. So that's also important for scientists to understand. And we don't have time, so we have to do this in a rapid way. So this is my message. Thank you. I hope this has answered the question.
It did. So thank you. So it is clear
Okay.
that this is there is a very important role and different instruments for it to be played. Um, let's move back to one of our first speakers, Paulo Frankel. I also have a tricky question for you. I have watched, of course, the policy blueprint panel that you moderated, and one of the debates that seemed to me very interesting that happened there is about, for instance, one kind of policy that is people tend to consider a lot is the carbon price. So look at carbon markets, carbon price, and this goes to economy-wide carbon price, but there are also examples of applications in specific sectors, such as the LCFS in California, RenovaBio in Brazil, and the CFS that Canada is putting the final touches. So how, and interesting discussions on the price of carbon, that it may be different across different sectors. So what can you say about this, the usefulness of sectorial policies versus economy-wide policies?
Thank you, Renato, for this question. Indeed, this was discussed. And from an economic point of view, an economist would say, in an ideal world, you have one problem. This is the CO2. You take one instrument economy-wide, and that's the optimal, which is probably definitely true in the longer term. But in the starting part, as you mentioned, and as was highlighted very clearly, different sectors are at a different level of progress in the decarbonization and have very different marginal cost of carbon abatement. Now, the point is that we are lacking time, and we have to tackle all these sectors right now. There is no more time to lose. I would like to repeat something that was highlighted in our roadmap at the climate summit. There is no more time left. This is the decade to deliver. And in order to deliver by 2030, we have to act now. And this is also linked to what Dr. Casture just said. With a technology risk which is there for these more innovative applications, the importance of public-private partnerships to de-risk these investments is fundamental. So we having in mind that an overarching carbon price is definitely useful and welcome, and probably the long-term solution. We have to apply many sector diversified approaches in order to foster innovation, to bring new technologies at market scale and bring them to long-term deployment. We have to be conscious that there are technology risks, that not all the solutions will work. So probably some people will lose some money, probably this will not be the optimal economic solution, but there is no more time to lose, and any time lost would cost much, much, much more.
Thank you, Paulo. This is somewhere very clear, so it's sometimes useful to or comfortable to just think, let's set a price and let the market deal with it. But reality is much more complex and needs this attention sector by sector. And speaking about sectors, I'd like to move to the transportation sector, a tricky one that Chris Quant was reporting on his session. And one kind of policy that applies in decarbonizing the transport sector case, and I put this also as a provocative question, is the policies putting caps on the emissions from vehicles. But it turns out that most of those policies that are being seen around the world, they are policies that look at the emissions at the exhaust pipe of the vehicle, the actual vehicle. And then they put a cap on it, eventually even a ban on vehicles that emit any kind of carbon emissions. But this not looking at what we can say the well-to-wheel aspect. So this comes from the fossil fuel sector, so the whole life cycle of carbon. So this favors, of course, what they are called zero emissions vehicles, because they emit no carbon at the exhaust pipe. There is no exhaust pipe indeed in those electric cars, for instance. But if you look at the whole life cycle of carbon, you can see that the energy used not only to drive the cars and fuel the batteries, but also in the production of the battery itself and other aspects, they can be heavy and intense in fossil fuel use. And on the other hand, vehicles that do emit from the exhaust pipe could perhaps be using sources of energy that are renewable and low carbon. So what do you think the situation is in terms of these policies, and what the panel discussed or the views were on these exhaust emission policies versus the well-to-wheel view over the whole life cycle?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this question. Indeed, a tricky question. So we have to define very carefully, let's say, our system. And in my view, when we talk about, let's say, the reduction of, let's say, grams of CO2 from the exhaust pipe from cars, and there is now a limit on that, and also car manufacturers reduce this emission. I see this mainly as an efficiency measure. Yes, so because the reduction of the CO2 emission from the tailpipe is really also improving the efficiency of the engine, and that in itself it is good, but it will not bring the emission to zero, because if then you will need also a biofuel as a fuel to bring the complete emission to zero, and that requires to look at the complete cycle of, let's say, biofuel production, use, and there has to be then a greenhouse gas reduction. So that is, let's say, when you look at the tailpipe. And indeed, electric cars are often favored because there are no tailpipe emissions. But as I told also in my presentation, this only makes sense when you use renewable electricity. And renewable electricity, for example, in the Netherlands, we are now between 20 and 30% renewable electricity in our grid. This will increase, of course, and we hope to achieve 70% by the year 2030. But still, it's not 100%. So these cars that are fed with electricity still also need fossil fuels. So there are CO2 emissions even when an electric car is driving. And that is something we really have to take into account, and that also has to be clear to the policymakers. And I must say that often this is not very well understood. Yeah, so people think that an electric vehicle just has zero emissions because it doesn't have tailpipe emissions, but you have to look at the complete cycle for both systems. So both for let's say electric vehicles, but also for biofueled vehicles. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's always good to have the efficiency of the engine as high as possible. So that would be my answer. And well, of course, in our session, we have seen several presentations where, let's say, improved efficiencies were presented, especially from the fuel cell. So I think that's a very interesting new approach that might come into the market in the future, but there are still steps to be taken to bring that into the market.
Thank you, Kees. And I believe we got the attention of Paulo as well, who wants also to come back on this question. Paulo?
So I take my hat of a previous life cycle assessment expert for 15 years. And while it is a must to look at the life cycle emissions, this is really very important. However, it also needs to be done in a perspective way. What really matters are not the life cycle as emission today, but the one in the future, when we will have a real market expansion of both the technologies. So let's say in 2030. And I wish to remind that the power sector is the first sector that will be hopefully decarbonized. So in other words, this argument, while it is true and the policymakers need to understand it, it has not to be a showstopper. These two things need to go in parallel. Electrification is positive as long as is it a push to decarbonize the electricity supply. And actually this push exists because you can make the case. However, at the same time, we have to be very clear that electrification alone cannot do it all and will never do it all, even in the longer term. And so we need both solutions in terms of more electrification and energy efficiency where it is possible, and taking into account another point that Kees made before, is that in building infrastructure is the real obstacle in terms of pace of velocity, and can also lead to some challenges in terms of stability of the grid at the distribution level, in particular if you use a lot of variable renewables. But this is open another discussion. But you have to consider that, and I would really push people not to see this in competition, but rather in a very useful parallel way. We need both electric vehicles and liquid biofuels for a very, very long time. And over time, the share of the applications will change, but definitely we need both of them.
Yes, I completely agree. We need both of them, and I also can see that, let's say, there are certain areas where there might be a preference for electric vehicles. For example, in cities where you want to reduce emissions, and for example in heavy freight transport, the biofuels will be preferred. So there is also different in application and also depending on the travel distance. But indeed, both will have to be developed, and well, hopefully both will improve and will have an accelerate deployment in the market.
Thank you. So I think that much is quite clear. I see Sangeeta also wants to apply on this. My only comment is that if you look at the policies that are being applied in many countries, my personal wonder is, are those policies really leading to the outcome that you are defending, that we need both? Or are they favoring just one and disfavoring the other? So that's the question on this policies that look only at the exhaust pipe. But Sangeeta, you have the floor.
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that both are important, and depending on any single resource, the energy resource is again challenging, risky. So we need to have multiple sources coming, and bioenergy definitely plays important role in the renewable energy basket. The second point was about the biomass as well. We have to provide some scenario predictions how much biomass can be utilized across the globe, which is applicable. So there are diversification and multiple uses are there. So India has done study for the biomass application availability and different resources. It's using satellite and mapping and those things. So I think that has been done with some of the other countries also. So that report would be, I think, useful for IEA to make analysis based on the availability at different levels. So this is just a comment I wanted to. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I think I move now to the finance world. It's a whole new world, and there is also a work stream the Biofuture platform has to develop, but already approved by the members to work on approaching this financial world to the bioeconomy world. And moving on to Devin, who reported on the session. And there are two aspects of the session that caught my attention. You also touched on them in your presentation. I'd like to go a bit in more depth. One, I would say one bad and one good. So the bad one is that the World Bank representative, more properly speaking, it's the CEO of Climate Investment Funds, which is a fund, a very important fund managed entirely by the World Bank. So she was there, and what she could say for the concrete activities of the fund on bioenergy, one of them wasn't about bioenergy at all, which is more about energy efficiency, which is a very beautiful work on promoting more efficient stoves that are using traditional biomass across Africa, but this is not sustainable modern bioenergy, or what we call the low carbon bioeconomy. And the other thing is some work that, of course, I'm thankful for on the maca-uva supply chain in Brazil. But put together, frankly, this is a bit short of the potential of the World Bank, especially if you look at what it is doing in other forms of renewable energy. So it struck me as the one of the demonstrations that we need to do more to approach the financial IFI world with the bioeconomy world. And one good note from the conference was the presentation that you mentioned, Devin, from Don Roberts, CEO of Navakita Capital Advisors, a Canadian firm. Out of his experience in these projects with this idea of proposing a credit rating, he mentioned that credit ratings is the main vehicle for creating trust in the financial world on investments, and moves more than $1 trillion annually of investments of all sorts. And he defended that creating a system for credit ratings for specific bioenergy supply chains, so be able to certify how trustable that supply chain can be, would be a game changer in the financial sector. So I would like to pass on to you to comment on those aspects a little bit more.
Thanks, Renato, for that. So with going back to the first question on or comment on the question of project examples, I did note that the project examples weren't strictly with regards to what we typically reference, especially in our work amongst the other panelists here through the SEM Biofuture initiative. But I would say that, and I think this message applies to kind of the policy world, regulatory, and programming, is that there is not one size that fits all. and I think that applies to a number of areas in both the, like I said, the policy and the financing aspect for the bioeconomy, and that we need to get going somewhere, and so perhaps it is the best examples for that particular jurisdiction, but that we need to then kind of build on that experience and advance to more modern examples and more modern technologies and therefore and sustainable, of course, and open the financing area to those other types of projects. So I think that's incumbent on the work of for example, as you referenced, the financing work stream within the Biofuture initiative. That I think that just goes to show that we have much progress to make there, but that there already are levers that we can leverage and build off of. We're not starting from kind of scratch. To the point on the use of the credits, the credit kind of credit rating idea that Don Roberts referenced. Yeah, I think this is it wasn't something else that's been referenced in the other speakers' presentations. So it's a somewhat I guess unique approach, and I'm familiar with Don, based on his work in Canada, and he's been on a few different panels and workshops that we have hosted. So he's presented this concept before. And as I said, the Canadian and U.S. Our governments have helped support to start that work. So we're continuing to kind of look into it and see how that can be expanded to really send those signals to the financial community, and again build off that work. So again, it's something where you have kind of a bit of a structure in place and the option there to leverage it, make adjustments as fit, and go from there.
Very good. So thanks for this message that we already have something to work with, and yes, good ideas and a good pathway to work on this finance sector. And my last question goes now back to Jim Spave on the biorefining. So please tell us, to panel debated on the issue of bio-based products and whether the views expressed on the policy frameworks that could cover those, because what we feel now, and this was, if Paulo also wants to comment later, this was a difficulty in the first steps of the blueprint development, is the lack of data, information, and sometimes definitions and categories. It's a very complex, wide, diverse world of bio-based products, chemicals, materials that come out of the biorefineries. And so the policy aspect many times lags behind, policy information lags behind bioenergy itself. So what do you think are the approaches to help solve this?
I do agree that in many countries, including in the U.S., there are not robust policies to support bioproducts, biochemicals, biomaterials, etc. Though I think the recognition of their value is gaining worldwide. So I think it's an opportunity for the Biofuture platform initiative and SEM campaign to study this area and try to bring forth the best examples that have been used in other countries, because they can have a tremendous greenhouse gas and climate impact, positive impact, through the use of biomass for these various products and replacing oil-based products. It's fairly early days, early years for them compared to the biofuels types of policies, but it's an area that we really need to invest in. So there's not a simple answer, I don't think, but I think it should be an element of the Biofutures work stream as we try to promote their contribution to the larger bioeconomy.
Very good. So more homework for yourself.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And you're
Paulo.
So if I can add my reasoning on this. First, I think this is one of the major objectives of the Biofuture SEM campaign that is going to be officially launched next week, is precisely to showcase some examples of the practices from industry in terms of substitution of fuel chemicals and materials in this decade, to listen to these companies and to their wish list in the sense of what they would like to have from policy, from governments, in order to scale up investment. And finally, to have some recommendation to develop the appropriate policies. Now, I think it is too preliminary, but my sense is that we will end up in recommendations on two fronts. One on creating demand, and there is some experience notably in some European countries for bioplastic products. And the second is the best use of the resources, which is something that Case mentioned a couple of times, which is the other part. So you have a limited resource because bioenergy is a limited resource and you have to make the best use out of it. And in some cases, the materials, may be the output that has the highest value, both in environmental and in economic terms. I'm talking loud. I think these are just suggestions, but I think we will end up in this direction. Let's say, I'm curious to see in 1 year from now, the interim results of the Biofuture campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we are approaching the end, but there are still questions from the audience. I'm pleased telling the organizers here if you can have an extra 10 or 12 minutes, if you can always stick around, and also for our final words. We have some questions. I don't believe we have the time, unfortunately, to get all of them, but we can also interact via the chat system in Hoover. I would like to put one question here for whoever wishes to answer it, though it is one aspect that we haven't really touched in this panel relating to trade. So the question from our co-chair of this conference also, Luis Augusto Horta Nogueira: we all need to increase the production and use of sustainable bioenergy, and in a broad sense, sustainable bioenergy is sometimes produced more efficiently in developing countries. How can we promote the global bioenergy trade, liquid biofuels, pellets, and others, which would be good for the environment also, but for the socio-economic development of developing countries? Case, you're first.
Yeah, thank you. You saw my finger. I'm missing, this finger from Zoom. Yeah, so this is the way to do it. No, I think this is a good question, and actually, from the Netherlands, we always have been involved in trade. So that's also why I'm interested to answer this question, because actually, as a very densely populated country, we rely on trade to make, let's say, a lot of operations possible. Also, the biofuel production in Rotterdam Harbor relies on the imports of, let's say, the basic resources coming from other countries. So how to promote this global bioenergy trade? The main reason of let's say, thing we have to do, at least here in Europe, it's increasing demand, and demand can only increase when let's say the politicians, the parliaments, when they have enough trust in sustainability. So the complete chain has to be proven sustainably. When that can be done, then there are, let's say, a lot of, let's say, the socio-economic benefits can be achieved in the countries that produce these resources, and that can be used in other countries who are willing to pay for that. So trade really is an option, but it is really, the problem is really to make it clear to the public, to the politicians, to the NGOs also, that it has been produced sustainably. And at the moment something goes wrong there, then this market is distorted. Thank you.
Thank you, Kees. Anyone else on this one? Okay, I think Sangeeta. Go ahead, and I will also, if I may put also another question to you as well, related to this one of trade and developing countries, is from Makorsini Mingomezulu, from the audience. How can bioenergy be achieved in countries where government financial support or subsidies is not possible? This is also a very good question. So you have both to address.
The first thing is about the bio-based products, materials and chemicals. I think this is my view, because we need to have market study. How much demand is there? What is the potential for this? Because these are like biofuels. We need large volume. On the contrary, for materials and chemicals, the market is limited. Currently, how much petrochemical uh, uh, fossil fuels or petrochemical hydrocarbon is used for these productions. So I think IA must be having some data. So that would be helpful. But these are definitely high value products. And for environment concern, these are definitely important for penetrating in the market. So that is important thing. Without subsidy, it's very difficult. It has to be driven by demand. So subsidy won't be helpful in longer term. This is just my quick view. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you, Sangeeta. So I also would say that the two questions are related, because trade could help if there is a tradable demand in countries that can provide the policy framework to provide value to bio-based products, then it would provoke a supply in developing countries once all the issues and the sustainability supply chains that Kees mentioned are also worked out. More comments on this? Well, we are approaching the end here. I'd like to take a page from Paulo, from his brilliant moderation of the panel yesterday on the blueprint, and ask each one of you one thing that is also coming from the audience in a number of questions. If you had to choose one thing that is the most crucial, and this is also in our poll. This is the poll for the session here. What would be the most significant step to achieve in order to promote sustainable bioenergy and bioeconomy development? Is it the policies, technology support? Is it sustainability? Is it finance? Is it transportation policy? You have 30 seconds each for your thoughts. Paulo, I'm starting with you here on the order of the screen.
Okay, thank you. For me, it's definitely sustainability, and having a step change in a frank and transparent dialogue on sustainability, because otherwise we have come to the point where this can be a showstopper to attract investors. So with that, What I mean is to have a dialogue with all outside the community, which honestly, in good faith, think that the bioenergy is harmful, and to engage in a dialogue and to try to find consensus on the most easiest parts, to recognize that there are more controversial parts, and then when it comes to very controversial point like the iLook that you mentioned yourself, Renato, to try to find alternative to mitigate the risk, and to have this approach in a more transparent way. For me, it's an absolute priority right now.
Very good. Jim Spaeth.
Thank you. Paulo summarized what I think is the Achilles heel of bioenergy that really needs our attention, the sustainability aspects. But I'm going to perhaps take the easy way out. I don't think we can, I think all of those areas, sustainability, technology development, technology push, policy pull, and the engagement and belief in the industry from the financing sector and all aspects of the financing sector, which is very, very broad, right? Everything from venture capital to governments to asset type investors to retirement plans, et cetera. We need all elements to work now. We need all of them to be worked on very strenuously and together, because there is a time urgency for us to be successful. And we need, as have been articulated by so many leaders of the world, there's a great urgency in tackling the climate problems right away. We can't put it off for another 10 or 20 years. We need to start now. And so as bioenergy is very important in its contribution, we need to start on all four of those aspects right now. And I look forward to working with you and all members of our community on those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Sangeeta.
Thank you. I agree with both Paulo and James about the sustainability and technology. I would say that collaboration is key and very important in both achieving both sustainability and delivering multi technologies. I would say innovations are definitely important. They can contribute for both technological aspect that are very powerful. So sustainability and technological challenges can be addressed by innovations. And for that, we all need to work together and share experience and share our contributions, complementary contributions. So collaboration for technology is very important.
Very good, Sangeeta. Thank you. There was also a question on this from Professor Glaucia on the collaboration and R&D deployment. So I guess you also answered it. Case Quant, your final words.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, I rather echo what has been said. Sustainability is crucial. Actually, the Netherlands is launching a call together with BBEST on sustainable biomass production, so to gain knowledge on this topic. So that could be useful in order to also define sustainability further. And we are also in the Netherlands, let's say, developing a sustainability framework, not just for the energy sector, but also for, let's say, the biochemical sector. So that could also be of interest for the Biofuture platform to use this information. And then secondly, technology deployment, crucial, and specifically the development of biorefineries to have to valorize biomass as a resource. So these are my priorities. Again, sustainability and also biorefineries.
Thank you, Case. There you have it. The poll is also pronounced itself. Devin, last but not least.
I guess I can't step out of line and disagree with everyone in their messages. So I'll also agree with my fellow panelists. And maybe just touching on Sangeeta's point about collaboration. I think one thing we're seeing here in Canada is greater collaboration amongst the various industry players along the value chain of the fuel production, which is very much needed from the feedstock through to the traditional refiners, and as well as new kind of entries into clean fuel production, and the technology providers. So that kind of continuous collaborative effort across the various industry players to advance these projects that may lack certain expertise in some areas, so that they can all benefit from that. And then maybe just pointing out that the key aspects of sustainability and policy, ensuring that there is support for all elements along what we like to call the value chain for producing fuels, so that it's not just weighted on RD&D or deployment of technology, but that you're supporting the full value chain in all aspects to enable that success.
Thank you, Devin. And in my own answer, I think I'm with you and Jim Spaeth in saying that it is a complex problem that needs to be tackled in all the barriers. If we don't solve one end, maybe the others will keep holding back development. So I think policies, finance, technology, industry, transport, they are all those very important aspects. But I also agree with Paulo that at least for many countries and regions, the aspect of gaining confidence in biomass potential and sustainability is probably a requirement for really solving all of those other aspects. So we have our work cut out for us in the future. For the moment, before I close the session and invite you to stay in the audience for the closing session of the BBEST and joined by Future BBEST conference that will be starting right now after this panel. But before I do that, I'll pass on the floor to Jim, my co-moderator here, and the next co-chair, for a few final remarks. But first, invite a round of applause for our speakers here, representing all the brilliant work of the 200 speakers in 40 sessions of this conference. You'll be able to keep attending them, please, briefly.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Jim, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Renato, and thank you to all the panelists. We are just among the many that need to engage in this hard work. We look forward to the SEM, the Biofuture, moving into the full-fledged SEM initiative that has been started, but reaching a much greater potential going forward and impact. And we look forward so much to working with private industry. That is absolutely key. I mean, they're the ones that will have to make it happen. We're just trying to help enable it. So really, it's a tremendous effort needed on all of our parts, NGOs, stakeholders of all types, governments, private sector, citizens, consumers. We're really in this together. And essentially, all of these markets on the big scale need to be global. They will not reach its full potential if they are small niche markets in individual countries. So we have a lot of hard work to do. I feel a great responsibility, and I look forward to all of you assisting and being leaders in the Biofuture initiative going forward. So thank you. We all need each other, and I look forward to working with you all going forward soon here, right away. We need to get to work. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, panelists. I hope you have enjoyed this panel. We have highlighted some of the many plenary sessions and conferences that I invite you to attend. Today we close the conference. Stay for the closing session in just a few minutes. We'll have a new roster of speakers here, but we'll be back online right now. So please stay in our audience. But after the official closing, Huva will keep working, and over the next few days and weeks, you will be able still to attend and engage in the conversations top notch and enjoy the opportunities that this conference provides. So thank you very much again. I look forward to work with Jim and our core group members, our facilitator, in carrying out this agenda in the future. As Jim said, I'm not out of the loop, and I'll still be here at least for the foreseeable moment. So thank you very much. And have a good day.
Thank you, Renato and James. Thank you, James. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I am Luiziana Ferreira da Silva, one of the 3 Secretary Generals of the BBEST-Biofuture Organizing Committee, alongside Marcelo Menossi and Clarissa Forec. The partnership between the Brazilian Bioenergy Science and Technology Conference, BBEST, and the Biofuture platform to jointly hold this event was made possible by our sponsors, namely Apex Brazil, Braskem, Biofit, and the U.S. Office of Naval Research Global. BBEST is led by the FAPESP Bioenergy Research Program, BioEN, that fosters research in the state of São Paulo. We would also like to thank the support of the Society of Bioenergy, the Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Agronomical Institute of Campinas, the Brazilian Center for Research in Energy and Materials, the University of São Paulo, the University of Campinas, the International Energy Agency, the World Bioenergy Association, the FAPESP Communication Agency, and ADG. I now have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Luiz Melo, the Scientific Director of FAPESP, a foundation that has continuously supported our efforts in bioenergy and bioeconomy.
Hello to you all. My name is Luiz Melo. I'm the Scientific Director of FAPESP, and it's an honor to be present at the closing ceremony of the BBEST 2021 Biofuture Summit 2. I hope, as with any scientific meetings, that you all have enjoyed participating on the several and different forums, discussing what's the next options and what we may develop in terms of new policies and technologies, what are the critical issues pending still to be solved, and that we may meet again, and not only virtually, but in presence in the near future. So thank you all for an engaging participation on this event, and hope to see you soon at the next meeting or at another event at FAPESP.
As we head to the end of our BBEST-Biofuture Joint Summit, we would like to recall the long road that led us to today. It was in August of 2019 that the organizers of the Brazilian Bioenergy Science and Technology Conference and the Biofuture Summit got together to talk about jointly holding their events. There was much to gain from joining the perspectives of the academy and policymakers. We worked very hard for half a year to design the best program for the gathering we would have in São Paulo, and then the unthinkable happened. Less than 30 days to the start of the event, we had to postpone it. At first, we thought we could still hold the event in a venue, and that belief guided us to plan it to take it a place at the end of 2020. We held webinars in between, which you can find in our website, in an effort to keep the community engaged.
As the end of the year approached, it was clear it was not yet the time for physical gatherings, which led us to hold what would have been the only virtual segment of the conference in November 2020. We had almost 500 people attending, with more than 300 international participants from around 40 countries. In this smaller segment of the conference, we held some policy debates, the launching of the Bio and Research Program goals for the next decade, and our BBEST-Biofuture Poster Awards, with 148 abstracts submitted, almost 8 hours of video under 5 areas of work. The first one comprising biomass, agronomy, breeding, other energy crops, biotechnological aspects of plant feedstocks. Another one comprising biofuels technologies, including biomass process engineering and biofuels production. A third one comprising biorefineries, bio-based chemicals, and biomaterials. The fifth area, biofuels, engines, and applications to aviation. And finally, but not least, sustainability, environmental, social, economic, and public policy issues. The winners in the 4 poster awards categories were Jonathan Vieira in the undergraduate category, Flávia da Silva Barbosa in the Masters category, Natália Vilela in the Doctorate category, Matheus Aparecido Pereira Cipriano in the Postdoctorate category.
And here we are again, having our interactions mediated by screens and technology, but with more than a year of experience. This time, we tried less to resemble a face-to-face meeting and took the opportunity to try to enjoy the particular features of the virtual format. We presented in these past few days almost 40 sessions of content covering the many different and latest aspects of bioenergy and the bioeconomy, from feedstock availability to engines and applications, with more topics being brought in than what was originally planned. You can even take a virtual tour to the São Martinho sugar mill, which was part of our original program. We had 635 attendees, 212 panelists, people from 40 countries coming together to discuss policies, sustainability, technologies, covering biofuels, biomass, biochemicals, and biomaterials. Unlike a face-to-face meeting, you did not have to choose between 2 different sessions that took place at the same time, and the content is still available for you to peruse in the future. You can go back and watch all of the content. The list of participants will remain available in the Yuva app, and we encourage you to take full advantage of this networking opportunity. I must say that there was one person that really was first place in the interactions during our event. Congratulations, you just earned a free ticket for the next BBEST conference. Having said that, I just want to tell you we are looking forward to a day when we will hop back in airplanes, suffer from jet lags, and try to find that one specific person we want to talk to in a coffee break. But we have learned a lot, and our face-to-face meetings will probably try to include some of the advantages the virtual format brings. And maybe when we are all safe and have the opportunity of interacting the way we once did, we might even appreciate this virtual experience a bit more. So that's it. Thank you for staying with us until this very end. We hope to see you with or without technology mediation as soon as possible. Bye.